India has grown at 6.5%. The middle class has grown from 10% to 30%. But in our case, though, he called us the king of tariffs. That's an insult. 2 years ago, less than 1% of global iPhones were made in India. And we have only about a dozen years before robotics will take over. Thanks to Mr. Trump, to be very honest. We are the most over-regulated country in the world. Indians don't lack ambition. We are jugaad people. Because they got a better teaching from AI
than they did,
than they did from her.
Right.
PhDs
Right.
to make the shirt whiter. We have failed to create an industrial revolution.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
India Unbound predicted India's rise. 25 years later, where have we succeeded? Where have we fallen short? And what still stands in the way?
Well, 30 years ago, in 1991, I predicted the rise of India. India has grown at 6.5% a year.
Right.
For a democracy, this is unprecedented.
Incredible, yes.
We have lifted 450 million people out of poverty.
Correct.
The middle class has grown from 10% to 30%.
Correct.
So, and in the meantime, we have also created a green revolution, that we have become from an agricultural deficit country, importer,
To an exporter.
to a fourth largest exporter in the world.
Correct. Yeah.
And we have created an IT. We have become a player in the IT
Ecosystem.
space. And domestically, we have created a digital revolution. So there's a lot good to be felt. Per capita income gone from $100 to $3,000. However, we have failed to create an industrial revolution. Every country that went from poverty to prosperity in the last 200 years went from an agricultural surplus to industry.
Correct.
We seem to have skipped the factory stage because industry, it represents, manufacturing represents less than 15% of GDP,
Correct.
employs 11% of people, and 45% of our people, working people, are stuck on the farm.
Correct. And small holdings at that.
And most of them, I mean, 1/3 of them, half of them are redundant.
Right.
The agriculture doesn't need that many people.
Right.
So that is the heart of the problem. That's our success and our failure. The fact is that the conditions today, it's not too late. We haven't missed the bus entirely. It would have been better if we had done this 10 years or so, 15 years before this. And we can discuss why we
Right.
didn't do it. But the fact is, today, infrastructure is far better. The logistics are far better. We've taken a lot of friction out of the system.
Right.
And frankly, thanks to Mr. Trump, to be very honest.
Right.
He has pushed us to open our economy. That was the original sin of India. And that went back to the 1960s,
That's correct, yeah.
when we closed our economy. When you close your economy, you then basically are telling the world that we're not confident enough to import your products and export our products. Mr. Trump has changed our mindset.
Yeah. I think not just ours, it's a global phenomenon now, but nonetheless, yeah.
Yeah. The point is that in our case, though, he called us the king of tariffs.
Right.
That's an insult.
That is.
That's not a compliment
It's not, yeah.
to be the king of tariffs. So we were not an open
Economy.
regime.
And despite liberalization,
Despite liberalization. And that's what we can discuss. Why? How did this happen? But really, the fact is that we have to get back to the basics. So given the push from America, then our scramble to make FTAs with the European Union, UK, and other countries. So that has led to a mindset, a much more open mindset.
That's correct.
And that's the only way. The way is through labor-intensive manufactured products.
Right.
And that you don't need AI technology or anything. That's
Right.
very straightforward. That's what creates jobs. And we have only about a dozen years before robotics will take over.
Right.
Fortunately, AI will kill the white-collar jobs and not the blue-collar jobs.
That is correct.
So the factory jobs still have time, and that's where we are at this moment.
Right.
The other thing that's happened in this last year is also a realization that we are the most over-regulated country in the world. There's an organization which is subsidiary of Team Lease in Bangalore.
Right.
They worked out, actually meticulously calculated, that in India there are 69,000 compliances.
Whoa.
A company has to make 6,500 filings.
Right.
And of those filings, a fifth are jailable. If you make a mistake in your filing,
Right.
or if you have not complied, you can go to jail. So it almost feels like we are one of the most hostile places in the world to do business.
It's almost like, we assume, guilt of a business enterprise, and we operate with that lens.
Yes, and that really goes back to this anti-business attitude.
That is correct.
And so if you have that kind of mentality, and the only model that was available to a country at that time, I'm
Right.
talking about the 1950s, was the Soviet Union.
Right.
Because we followed the Soviet model,
Right.
the idea was that, look, the public sector would be at the commanding heights of the economy. Those are the words
Right.
from the second 5-year plan.
Right.
And therefore, a lot of industry was barred from investing in, like if Tata's wanted another steel plant, they couldn't have had it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And it was reserved for the public sector.
Right.
So and the second part of it was that the private sector was crooked and needed to be regulated.
Correct.
And the regulation that took the form of what Rajaji called License Permit Inspector Raj.
Right.
And really, it was all done in the name of the poor.
Right.
The big mistake we made in 1991, the mistake we should have learned from other countries. What did China do? You see, we both had the same kind of bureaucracy, India and China.
Right.
And in India, we inherited a colonial bureaucracy whose
Right.
job, our people were trained for law and order.
That's correct.
And you got brownie points.
Law and control, so their entire job was sort of control,
No, law and order. That
Right.
means if somebody wanted something, you said no.
Right.
You got brownie points for saying no.
Right.
That's how you got promoted.
That's correct. I mean, have we missed our Deng Xiaoping moment, or you think, we'd see something like that in coming future? So if one of the things, that people don't, because of the sheer amount of control in the Communist Party had, and he had on Communist Party, I mean, the principles of land, labor, and capital are also kept on the side, right? He subsidized where subsidy was required. Kept currency artificially low, and everything that was required for the country to take off, they did. Whether it was right or wrong can be debated in a certain this thing, but they had a single-mindedness in terms of becoming an economic superpower. So have we missed that bus? Is it possible for us to
No, I don't think we missed that bus, but we should learn. I told you we did not change the incentive system of our bureaucracy. We did not change the attitude of the people. People still believe that the reforms or the market makes the rich richer and the poor poorer.
Yeah.
People can't distinguish between being pro-business and pro-market. And so we've landed up with the politics of freebies. And if a reformer, say if I went into politics and I decided to run for elections, I would say to my constituents, to the people, that look, I'll get investment, factories will come, jobs will be created, and you all will be much happier. Plus, I'll improve the schools so we get the skills for those jobs. And what will the party opposing me say? From tomorrow, I'll give every woman 1 lakh rupees a year. I will give you free electricity, and I'll give you free this, free that.
It's a slippery slope.
So, who do you think people will vote for?
Absolutely,
They'll never vote for me. They'll say, you'll be gone. Now, what needs to be done?
That's the solution, yeah.
What needs to be done is essentially, as I said, we've created a digital revolution. From 42% to 85% bank accounts have grown.
That's correct.
And so the formalization of the economy has happened. The government has set up these 3 deregulation commissions in the last year, and the people heading those are very senior people, former cabinet secretary, present cabinet secretary. So they mean business, and they've already shown that what they can do.
Right.
But I'm hoping for a bonfire of these 69,000 compliances.
Right.
So it won't be easy. But the whole Jan Vishwas bill that has passed Parliament is about trust. That regulation should be based on trusting the citizen.
Yeah.
In addition, we have other reforms still to be done. But if we are serious, those will be done too. We have certain deficiencies, like our electricity rates are being subsidized, so we are not competitive. Freight rates and railways are not competitive. But that's where PLI comes in.
Right.
And if you use it well, the best example of using it well, the low-hanging fruit that will show us is the manufacture of iPhones in India.
That's correct.
2 years ago, less than 1% of global iPhones were made in India. 0.2%.
That is correct, yeah.
Today, 30%
That's correct.
are made in India. And they're all from China. 100% were made in China. Now, just the assembly of the iPhone, not the components or anything. That's where the big jobs are, actually.
Right.
Just the assembly has created 2 lakh jobs, 70% direct jobs, and 4 times 4 indirect jobs, so total 800,000 jobs.
That's correct.
70% are women. They've put up in Tamil Nadu a dormitory, like a 5-star for the women, for 20,000 women are housed there. That is how China did it. Most interesting part of the story is that when Vietnam heard that they had lost the iPhone to India, the Prime Minister of Vietnam got on a plane, flew to Cupertino, California, the headquarters of Apple, met Tim Cook, persuaded him. He said, look, we've lost the iPhone, but give us the iTablet. And here are the reasons why you should give us the iTablet. And he succeeded. The moral of the story is that we should, similarly to the iPhone, target a brand leader in the world. Target them to, say, Nike, shoes, garments, Zara, food processing.
That's correct.
These are all labor and toys, electronics assembly, If I were a chief minister of a state, that's what I would do. I would take a delegation of business people, show them our capability, show them and tell their fellow, like in the case of Apple. Apple didn't invest in the factory, Foxconn invested.
That's correct, yeah.
So similarly, there are contract manufacturers available. That's what we need to do.
And that was my next question, that we are assembling Apple, why don't we have Apple?
Okay.
Yeah.
So the answer to that, when we closed our economy, we closed it to competition.
Right.
A company becomes strong. The school of becoming successful for a company is competition. We say, oh, but our people don't invest in R&D. Why should they invest? They've got the market sitting there. Why improve your product if you've got a 60% market share? But you allow global competition to come in. Suddenly you guys will compete, and then there also, if you whop them in your own market, you then go to the next one.
Correct.
And you get the confidence. And so that is really the way. I seem to be blaming 60s and 50s, but why didn't this government do it?
Right.
In fact, it raised the tariffs.
Right.
It did the opposite. Here, these people said Atmanirbhar. Now, Atmanirbhar has two meanings. It means self-reliance, which is good.
Right.
But it also means self-sufficiency,
Right.
which is bad. Unfortunately, when Mr. Modi says Atmanirbhar, a lot of people take the message, oh, we don't need foreigners. We can do it all ourselves. That mentality
That is
the mentality to poverty. And so, if we want to go to that Viksit Bharat goal, and we can do it.
And there is intent, actually, you can see the intent.
There's an intent. So hopefully, all these things will come together.
Right.
There are other things we have to do.
I'll tell you, there are two periods in which, we had a remarkable growth of two different industries, that I have seen with my own eyes, There's a time when we made the export of garments from this country tax-free. And suddenly, places like Noida, were full of garment exporters, and it really grew. But it was periodic, so it was allowed for a decade or so, and then it was pulled back. And the moment it was pulled back,
No, but it was not the tax-free, that thing that really killed our hopes for becoming a Bangladesh type of garment exporter.
Right.
What killed it was a legislation called Small Scale Industry Reservation. Everybody said small is beautiful, small is beautiful. So the government said we don't want big companies to enter. If they set a limit, that if the limit of this industry was so much, basically 700 industries were excluded. So people like Tatas, Birlas, any decent sized company could not enter. And that did not go away until 2008, that law.
Right.
And that, today you ask, well, why didn't the Tatas go into garment textile? Because they were not allowed.
Right.
And then by the time that you opened it, they were doing TCS and other things that they were doing.
That's correct, yeah. And it's a sin, actually, if you think about it. We are perpetually in deficit, thanks to our petroleum imports and so on and so forth. And it puts a lot of pressure on our currency, because, most of it is balanced by remittances by, blue collar workers, if you really think about it. So it is imperative, for an import dominated country, it is imperative, that you encourage whatever format of export, because the tax is not important, the foreign exchange is,
Correct.
And the other this thing happened was the STPI of India. I have been a beneficiary of that. I used to run a services company. Anything that we earned in dollars, there were bonded warehouses that were created with any office that you had. You just had to submit a plan and ask for it, And any money that you earned in, foreign exchange was made tax-free. And it just gave, and like I said, I've been a beneficiary of that. It just meant, that I would take a flight, go to Europe, go to Middle East, go to any place that I could, to go and corner any kind of business that I could, And the reason for that was, that I knew that if I made $1, that entire dollar was mine. I did not have to pay any taxes on that.
Right.
And at some point even that was taken away and prematurely.
But taxes have never been the most important thing it's good that we should use tax leverage and certainly
holidays,
tax holidays, etc., to make ourselves competitive.
Right.
And that's where PLI comes in. I was telling you about
Right.
Apple,
Right.
that how they persuaded their headquarters that, look, we have problems from India.
Right.
Our main problem, actually garments, the single biggest reason why India did not, one was the small scale industry reservation.
Right.
The other one was our labor laws.
Right.
You know what our situation with
Oh,
the
absolutely.
labor
Yeah.
laws. So and that still, we have done some improvement with the labor codes that have been announced, but we still have to make ourselves competitive.
2023, I was in London sort of doing a roadshow for a bunch of my companies and my studio to be able to raise capital, and I wanted to sort of create a corridor. European money is also sort of lagged behind, right? They were too conventional, did miss the IT bus completely. And now they're looking to sort of, get into the new economy. And I said that, you can't be a better place than India. A lot of innovations happening, lots of entrepreneurs and so on and so forth. So why don't we sort of create this corridor where European money comes into India? And I went and met over a dozen, including London Stock Exchange, the directors and so on and so forth. I met over a dozen sort of, merchant banking, investment banking, and your private equity firms, And I was surprised to see that India was nowhere on their thing, and in some places I saw that they're actively investing in Africa, they're actively investing in Latin America, troubled countries, Brazil, and so on and so forth. In Africa, lots of these countries, Kenya, Nigeria, and so on and so forth, And I was like, we're better than that, I mean, why would you not sort of come to this thing? And they said, no, it is far easier for us, and straightforward for us to be operating in Latin America and Africa than it is, to operate in India. And I was like, completely sort of, shocked by that response.
Yeah, well, it's a very sad thing that India should be getting far higher foreign direct investment than it does, and but its image is poor.
Right.
It's a difficult place to do business. That's what investors.
Which also means that we have to do narrative building. Often, there are regulatory issues and so on and so forth, but I would like to believe, that we are easier to operate in than Nigeria, so to speak.
Well, so the answer, I told you, what did the Prime Minister of Vietnam do when he heard they lost the iPhone?
They went and sold it.
So you need every chief minister of the state who wants investment to do the selling, that look, we have changed. We have set up the regulatory bonfire.
Classic example is also, so in the auto industry in China, you could not be majority shareholding, right? So a Chinese company had to be 51%. But for Tesla, China made an exception and gave them 100% subsidiary within China because they wanted them to sort of operate out of there, to learn, to sort of, train this thing and so on and so forth. So even a country, and it was already a giant by then, right? It made that exception.
Well, that was the difference, you see, between India and China. That China actively wooed my company. Was going to set up. We had a product called oil of Olay, and China had become a very big market, biggest in the world for oil of Olay. And so we were going to set up a factory. And so we were looking at several possibilities, different provinces, and the person who went from our company, he was met at the airport by the mayor with a red carpet and said, invest in my state for these reasons. I'll give you this, I'll make sure you get electricity. Your factory will be running in 3 months. That's what, that's how they talked to investors.
And
they went abroad to get those investors.
That's correct. Believe it or not, this happens in US also. There are mayors of cities, that have come to our offices, to say that why don't you set up? We incentivize. They don't incentivize as much as China, but there is a mayor actually walking into your office in India saying that why don't you sort of come and set up a shop in, say, Washington State or something like that, and we'll give you these incentives, from that perspective. So it's a developed economy, which is coming to a developing economy to say that why don't you set up a shop between us. Now this brings us to a little thing. So government is one, policy of course is a very, very important thing, but it's not everything, right? A large part of our success story, if we may call it, has also been written by private entrepreneurs, and there's a boom in entrepreneurship. I mean, we have over 200 unicorn companies at this point in time. We are the third largest sort of in terms of purely numbers, third largest startup center in the world, after Silicon Valley and China, or the other way around now. So which brings me to the thing, right? But most of the solutioning that we are doing is derivative. I mean, it basically either tries to copy from existing models. So an Uber becomes an Ola, and Amazon becomes a Flipkart. Or it is arbitrage based, which was required. I'm sure when we post 91, arbitrage was a great thing to sell, right? Our engineers are 10 times cheaper than yours, so might as well do it here. What's the way forward?
Answer is that Indians don't lack ambition.
Right.
They don't lack the innovative ability. We are jugaad people. So the answer is going to be, first, create a world-class brand before you go world-class.
Right.
In other words, the answer, one, we start the competition in our market. And I think certainly some of these startups will scale. People will spend in R&D. I mean, why do you do R&D? Because you want to create a superior product superior to your competitor.
That's IP. You have to create.
You have to create a product that is superior.
That's correct.
R&D helps you to create a superior product. At P&G, we had 1,000 people working on detergents, PhDs,
right,
to make the shirt whiter.
Correct.
Because there was competition. So what I'm trying to say is that it's nothing cultural, nothing the fact that because somehow we lack ambition.
Actually,
so that is not true.
Right.
It is all we are responding rationally to incentives. There was no incentive to do it in any other way.
Right.
And now you can even think, you could see, I mean, Amul, I was very happy to see Amul going abroad to many countries.
That's correct, yeah.
Because anyway, that's the quick answer to your question.
Right.
The reason why Sony became a global brand is because Sony became a top brand in Japan first.
Correct.
Similarly to Toyota and Honda, the same way as Samsung, you first succeed in your own territory, and then you have the confidence.
And we have a rich history of trade actually in this country. If you really think about it, right from Silk Road, even very few people know that that we used to be the rich traders in Middle East. So if you look at countries like Oman, UAE, etc., the Gujarati traders ruled the roost.
Well, I can tell you because I have edited for Penguin a 17-volume history of Indian business and Indian economy. These are slim volumes, beginning with the Arthashastra.
Right.
And the second volume is about Roman trade.
Right.
One ship from Rome would arrive at a South Indian port every day.
Right.
And the Roman senator, Pliny, in 78 AD, he rose up in the Senate and told the senators, we are losing 65% of Rome's gold and silver to India because
you're buying stuff from them. Yeah.
We are buying their cottons and we are buying their spices and black pepper, and they're not buying anything of ours.
Right.
So either we sell them something, you Romans, or he tells senators, stop wearing those togas. They're made of Indian cotton.
Right.
Tell your women not to use pepper in our food.
This is Donald Trump of his time.
He was the Donald Trump of his time. He had a trade deficit. And this trade deficit, by the way, was the story. India had a trade surplus right through till the Industrial
Yeah,
Revolution.
we were 25% of the world GDP at one point of time.
That's right.
No, so, and it's a very good point, so, at the beginning of, before we started recording, you asked, what is the concept, and why are we doing One Big Future? We want to go back to that glory. I mean, at least some of us, will have to start believing that it is possible for us, we probably sort of not be able to go to 25% of the world GDP, hopefully, fingers crossed, but we want to get to the point, where our products, set the benchmarks like they did, at one point in time, and like I said, and we do talk, about our sort of past, but with arrogance. We don't see our past as inspiration, right? So we had the first university in the world, so we go and tom-tom it, everybody sort of talks about it. We are not sort of, talking about how is it, that legacy, that pride, has to be revived, and this brings me to the next question. Say a country like Japan, one of the most ignored or not talked about aspect of it is, that Japanese teachers are among the best paid, public servants or private sort of, this thing, they're among the best paid in the world, so their teachers afford Ferraris in Japan, right? And so, which brings us back to our education system, because in the absence of that's where the crop of, I've gone to sort of, thankfully our education system is very affordable for all of us, and I remember my school fees used to be 40 rupees, and I went to a convent school in Chittaranjan. And, so 40 rupees my father could afford, so we went to a nice school, got the education and which paved the way for whatever else, but majority of Indians don't get that, right? No, I mean,
that's an area where we have failed.
Right.
I think there again, let's talk about the successes.
Right.
That one thing we have achieved is almost universal. 98.2%
literacy
of children are in school.
Right.
So we've solved the quantity problem.
Right.
But the quality problem.
And which is where the
exactly.
crux of the whole thing.
And so only about 10-15% of Indians get a decent education.
Right.
And the government schools have failed so badly that now 51% of India's children are in private school.
Right.
And these are not elite schools.
Well, they're actually as good or bad as, the government schools from that perspective, if you really think about it.
Well, except the teacher shows up.
Right.
The 1 out of 4 teachers does not show up in a government school. And 1 out of 2 who shows up is not teaching.
True.
That was the results of that famous Kramer study.
Right.
Done by Harvard.
And talking about solution, so is a hybrid model of instructors and, tools that are available like AI and so on and so forth, is the hybrid model the way to go? Because you obviously cannot sort of, produce millions of teachers overnight, so what is, because,
I know what your question
right.
is. And I'll tell you, first of all, to talk about teachers' salaries.
Right.
Yes, I'm delighted to hear how Japan pays. I mean, Ferraris or no Ferraris. But in India, a starting salary of a primary school teacher in the government
right.
in UP is 70,000 rupees a month.
Which is reasonable.
Which is damn good, considering that you go to IIM and IIT, and if you can get 70,000, you feel very happy.
That's correct.
The point is, that teacher, though, is absent and is unaccountable and is often running a private business.
That's correct.
So the incentive system, it's the lack of accountability. And the salary difference is so great between the teacher. And I'll tell you, I know a teacher in what we call the low fee. The fees of that school is 1,000 rupees a month.
Right.
Here in Delhi. And the school teacher's fee is 8,000 rupees a month.
Right.
And is far better, more motivated than any government school teacher.
Which is what I said, that
So I just wanted to get this clear,
right.
that why one of the causes of our failure in education is this.
Right.
And now to your question about AI, the
right.
hybrid model. I met a school teacher from a small town.
Right.
in UP. And she told me that and this is all her initiative, this is a private school,
Right.
low fee private school, because I've written a lot about them.
Right.
The somebody had sent her to me to tell me what she had done.
Right.
And what had she done? She had given every child in her class room an AI tutor.
Right.
And the person could converse in his mother tongue.
Right.
In the case of Bihar, it's Maithili. You can
Right.
speak in Maithili. You don't have to know how to type or anything like
Right.
that. You don't have to know English. In the same way, what she had done was that in the lingo, local lingo, a child, if he did not understand the lesson, he could ask the tutor, tell me.
And without being rebuffed, because of lack of knowledge, right? Because
No,
that's-
she
yeah.
would guide. The
Right.
idea was she would guide the child because she had a dashboard.
Right.
She knew which are the kids who had understood the lesson
Right.
and who had not. So she called them and she told them all, in fact, that after class, if you like, we'll end the class 15 minutes early. You ask the tutor, I'll be sitting in front, ask the tutor what you didn't understand about this class. And you know what the answer they got after 1 month of
Right.
this? The kids said, we understand your class, we understand the lesson far better.
Right.
And she suddenly felt insecure because they got a better teaching from AI
Then they did, otherwise.
than they
yeah.
did from her.
Right.
And she felt that, oh my God,
You know.
am I going to lose my
No,
job?
I mean, and I'll tell you what, this
And
is
what I'm trying to say to you is that this is the inspiration. That what if this could happen in every village in India?
Absolutely, and should, because the thing is, that we talk about a term that we use, called generational talent, right? And a scientist in the 18th century, before the age of 25, he'd already sort of, had all the laws of motion, gravity he had cracked, and to be able to calculate all of that, he had created calculus as well. He did all of that before turning 25, right? And it took us 100 years, so Newton's law of gravitation stood for 100 years, and he was very honest about the fact that I don't know how it works. I know it works, but how it works, it took more than 100 years, for a gentleman named, Albert Einstein to come in and essentially talk about the fabric of space and time and how it sort of curvatures, and he explained why gravity works, right? It takes 100 years sometimes, for a generational talent to come in and change the paradigms, that we exist in, right? Which means that every child, that has not gotten the opportunity, there could be hundreds of Newtons,
Right.
that perished
Right.
because, we could not provide them with the fundamental education that would have taken them to the next level, right?
Correct. Before AI came, I started a program with
Right.
a NGO that I'm on the board of, etc., called Bolo English.
Right.
Just using an app called Hello English.
Right.
And the app, if you went through, it was like playing a game for a
Right.
child. And in my case, it was my cook's daughter,
Right.
who came from Almora, from
Right.
the village near Almora, who was desperate to learn English.
Right.
And so she's the one really who pushed me into this. And I discovered that by the time she left the house, after 2 months, she went back to her village, she had acquired a speaking knowledge of about 500 English
Kids
words.
learn really fast. Yeah.
And the confidence she had to converse in English. And in fact, when she arrived, she didn't know, she couldn't say a word. But when she left, she says, "Thank you. I've enjoyed staying with you."
Wow.
And and it's nice weather we have there.
Right.
You must come and visit us in Almora.
And what a remarkable feeling, right?
So-
and that kid gets the confidence. Yeah.
So we started this program called English Bolo,
Right.
where there were 80 classes that you could go through. But for a kid, it was being rewarded to go from one. So it's like playing a video game.
Right.
Playing game. and she loved it and she could do it, and we said let's do it.
Right.
So that's where I got the idea that technology
Plays a key role, in
could
terms
be,
of
if we could just do this. So now what we did in Delhi was that we did an experiment in 5 low budget schools,
Right.
low fee schools, of putting giving a tablet, or you can have a screen, and the kids can really learn
Right.
English in that way in the
No,
schools.
and I think this is one of the things where I'd urge the government sort of look at a long deep look, because you have to make the instruction ecosystem flat. If you flatten that, and if you make sure that everybody has the opportunity of sort of getting similar, instructors should not be removed. They should be there. They're there. They instill discipline and so on and so forth. But they have to be aided so that the quality of education that is being disseminated
Right.
is correct. In fact, we'll do at some point of time.
So it would the key thing. If I were a chief minister of a state,
Right.
I would tell, it's because the teachers would have to be retrained.
That's correct.
That's the biggest obstacle.
Right.
But there, at least 20%, if 80% of the teachers are not, have the wrong attitude, 20% are really.
Right.
So they will see the possibilities of this. But let's not confine this to education. Just think, there's another experiment I tell you about.
Right.
Another one was a friend of mine who's a doctor.
Right.
He's a famous doctor. So a couple of years ago, when AI first came out, he started reading into the mic of his Mac. He used to read the diagnosis
Right.
to the computer,
For transcribing and so on and so forth. Yeah.
to AI.
Right.
He had an AI, and he would, and after, he examined the patient, and then he would ask AI for the diagnosis. He first made his own diagnosis, then he asked the
Cross-check,
AI
yeah.
for diagnosis. And he's now done it over 500 patients.
Right.
And he says that the AI's diagnosis is invariably superior to his.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
He
And
says
so,
that he might have forgotten something about this, but the knowledge base of AI was so much.
Yeah, we are in the process of investing in a startup like that, where glasses are worn and it's patent filed, Indian startup. So there are meta glasses that have camera, so the reports come in front of the doctor, and these reports are printed reports, so the camera captures it, and it listens to the conversation between the doctor and the patient for symptoms and so on and so forth. Now, legally, you cannot use AI to be able to sort of give this thing, but it acts as a co-pilot, to sort of, smooth over things that you may or may not have missed.
Yeah.
And because it has a huge database to compare it to, it can sort of,
So just imagine.
Right.
Just imagine, Fahad, there's a village, a poor a woman, it's midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning, and her daughter has got high fever,
Right.
very sick. And all she has to do, if she's got an AI,
Right.
if she's been trained, all she has to do is speak the symptoms of that child.
Correct.
In fact, it can be interactive almost, because if she missed out something,
The AI can ask.
can
Yeah, that's
prompt.
correct. Yeah. Even the health workers locally, if you think about
Yeah,
it.
but the point is, there are no health workers at 2 a.m. in the morning.
That is correct. Yeah.
And so she can tell the AI that I don't have any doctor at home right now. Prescribe me something. That prescription that AI will give her will be for the morning.
Right.
And by the way, the AI will know which are the pharmacies in her neighborhood,
Where you can get
where in the village, town,
right.
and even know the inventory of the medicines
Right.
there.
And if there's something as simple as like hydration and so on and so forth, it could suggest that give something
Correct.
vitamin C
So,
and so on and so forth.
what I'm saying is that at night, that poor woman, AI can give her advice on what she can do right now with its hydration.
So in the education itself, right, moving a little higher, in the thing, it comes to, so the fundamental, if you look at, the reason why America has, and before that Europe, has so much of IP. You almost went to Oxford, but people who go there say that every second place there's a plaque, of a Nobel laureate in physics or some other space. So, there'll be a Turing, there'll be a this thing, etc., etc. Something big was invented there. Something big they came up with, like I said, pre-World War II, it was, mostly, European countries, whether it is Germany or England and France and Italy and so on and so forth. Post that, it was largely America, where a lot of innovation came in. And they came in because, they understood the commercialization of a proposition. So if someone's come up with a proposition, a scientist has come up with a proposition, without the expectation of ROI, they back it. And then when it achieves its result, they essentially know how to commercialize it, right? That is probably the key to, if you create a building block of a big technology, you earn the maximum in that, right? So if you made a chip, a GPS chip, for example, Surf made GPS chip, 52% of the world GPS chip came from one place, and they made money on all of it. What needs to be done to be able to sort of, push the STEM graduates, and so on and so forth in the direction of R&D, and also create an environment for commercialization of all these ideas?
Yeah. No, that's a very important question, and it begins to begin with. I think we've talked about primary education,
correct,
and so on, but certainly very quickly, it's not a rocket science. Everybody in the country should be using it. We always jump in and say, oh, but there are this problem, the cognitive skills will be lost,
right,
if and all that. Let's look at the glass of water that's half full,
right,
and not half empty,
right,
as this glass.
It's a little more than half empty,
And
but nonetheless,
yeah, it's going to be fully empty now.
So that's the thing. And
my point is that you start somewhere,
right,
and first of all, the literacy, AI literacy, should be pretty universal.
Universal.
And it'll get there, because it's too good to keep out
That
from the hands of, we have 1 billion smartphones now.
That is correct, yeah.
What I'm saying is that you just ask any question. I mean, for my own research, I use AI. I use AI as a Socratic partner.
Right.
I use AI to test my ideas.
Right.
And I get a very, very good feedback from it. So what I'm trying to get at is that in every field, we need this AI literacy.
Right.
And that actually will happen. It would help if teachers were partners,
right,
of the students rather than fighting it or whatever.
Right.
And then the next stage is what you're talking about, because if you make enough people, if it's the IITs and the IIMs and the College of different universities, etc., start the process, and the startups themselves, which have become unicorns, become models,
right,
role models for others. You get there.
No, and by the way, that's a great point you've made, and I'd ask and just add to it. One of the things that I spoke about in certain forums, and I've noticed, like for example, in China, there's an Alibaba that was created. There was Tencent, that came out, and a bunch of other big guys. So what they did was, they essentially created a corpus, and that corpus went downstream, into a bunch of innovative companies, right? So they generously sort of incubated a bunch of companies, gave access to capital as well as networks to be able to take the stories. And these are companies where they had minority shareholding. They did not hold there was not ownership intention. The intention was to sort of have downstream innovation. I have the capital. I'm really good at doing what I'm doing. I have a directory called Alibaba.com. I have Ant Financial. I'm making pots of money. I can't do all the innovation myself, so I would basically do downstream investment. You've been the head of one of the largest companies in the world, in India, and you've interacted with the biggies, in the industry. Do you think that there is a movement that is required in this country? You've been the head of one of the largest companies in the world, in India, and you've interacted with the biggies, in the industry. Do you think that there is a movement that is required in this country?
No. And that's where it begins. I mean, we learnt it. This is a lesson 101 from Silicon Valley.
Right. Yeah.
These guys with pots of money should become venture capitalists. They should invest in startups. They should
and research centric startups, which have like a potential of creating big difference without the expectation of ownership, and that is very important, right?
Yeah.
The founder's motivation to continue running something comes from what they'll do for themselves, right? So if you take a majority stakeholding in a company, the motivation dies, and that's the thing.
Yeah, no, it's the incubation
ecosystem, right? From that perspective,
you incubate,
right?
And I absolutely agree with you, and we could be doing a lot more.
Right.
And companies like TCS should have be incubating, and Infosys should be incubating.
That is correct.
And
not always from the ROI lens, that's important, right?
Yes, but it's ultimately you don't want to lose money either.
Of course,
but I think that's a far better model than for the government.
They do it via sovereign fund route and so on and so forth, which is professionally managed, direct infusion of capital, no, it's a bad idea.
No, and that too, it's very, very. You need very high levels of governance. One of the big reforms we need in India is the reform of governance.
Oh, absolutely.
I wrote a book called India Grows at Night.
Right.
And its actually original title was India Grows at Night when the government sleeps.
Right.
Which means that India's success is a story of private success and public, that India has risen despite the state, not because of the state. By the way, my publishers thought that was a bit rude, so we didn't go with that original title. But that's really the story of India. And so what we need, though, is modicum of governance. One of the things that actually most people forget that drives a lot of people out of India is not money, it's actually governance.
That's correct.
Where today you have, for anything you need, you have to bribe. That's not a decent person.
Bribe is one part of it, but also sort of, I recently, for this foundation that we have created, right, it took me and my co-founders 3 or 4 visits to get a tax code. I want to pay tax. I want a tax code. It is not an incentive. It is a burden that I'm taking for myself, right? So to get a GST number, we had to make 3 visits. They were very polite. They seemed efficient. It's not that they asked for bribe. There was no bribe involved. But the point is, why do I have to sort of
You should get it online.
Online, yeah, exactly. Why do I have to sort of
So what I was saying is, it's a bigger story, and there is some progress because in the tax department they have moved income tax to a faceless assessment,
right?
And that is a good step.
Oh, it is.
That's a step in the right direction. And certainly in my case, and my CA tells me, he has that for the last, since they introduced it 5, 6, 7 years ago, we haven't had to visit an income tax officer or had a visit from an income tax officer. It is all
everything's automated. Also, with passport,
tax,
for example.
The tax is paid online. Refunds come online after a month and a half. And there is no friction.
Right.
And it's not perfect, I'm sure. But GST is also, they're trying to move into that direction.
Yeah, have to.
But apart from this, the bigger issue, the bigger area is things like the judiciary. There are 4 pillars of governance.
Right.
Judiciary, police, bureaucracy, and parliament.
Right.
And I'll tell you, in the case of judiciary, why should it take us 15 years to get justice when it could be done in 2 or 3 years?
Right.
Why should there be 5 crore cases pending, 50 million cases pending in the lower courts? 70% of the inmates in our jails, they're under trials. This is one kind of failure. Police. I mean, I'm a privileged person
Right.
in the country, but I get scared going near a police station.
Yeah, my father is a policeman, but I get scared going near a police station, So
There you go.
So yeah.
And why should the police be the handmaiden of the chief minister
Right.
and be needling the opposition MPs all the time? Then let's take Parliament.
Right.
Why should 1 out of 4 members, or now it's 3 members of Parliament, have a criminal record?
Yeah, they're very, very large issues. So, but here's the thing, there are two experiences I had with respect to the governance and ease of it. I registered a company in Dubai.
Let me just finish
Sure,
one second.
sure.
So the 4th pillar
Right.
is the bureaucracy.
Right.
Why, you ask yourself, you've run an organization.
Right.
I've run an organization.
Right.
Why should a person who works 14 hours a day really is effective, and his batchmate who works 2 hours a day, the rest of the time is time pass, politicking around, they will both get promoted on the same day. They get the same salary. And chances are the guy who's politicking may
Might get a
actually pick up the plum job.
Right.
Now, how can you run an organization? Running an organization that runs the country with that incentive system. We talked about reforms.
Right.
This is more important reform if we want to achieve that Viksit Bharat goal
Right.
in 2047.
If there is a filing that you've missed, or if there is a discrepancy in something that is happening, they'll write to you and ask you for a clarification saying, did you make this mistake, or is there a problem, or whatever else? And they take this thing. If needed, they'll meet you, if you start a company, they'll give you, and thankfully Government of India has also started it with Startup India and so on and so forth. There's a certain amount of tax holiday that will give, there's a tax rate, which is there. If you're not earning in Singapore, there's no tax, and so on and so forth, right? So there are incentives that they give you. More importantly, if you're creating local jobs, they'll give you an office free of cost. They'll give you sort of, for local jobs, some countries, including Taiwan, they give you, subsidies.
We've discussed this.
Right.
Basically, this is why thousands of Indians, millionaires, have
Right.
moved to Dubai.
That is correct.
And similarly, Singapore as well. Singapore
there's a
now
very
it's a little more difficult
Yeah.
to get PR.
Right.
But
His thing, and this brings me to a very interesting question, while everybody else was moving out, there's a brain drain, as we call it, happens, you chose to come back, I mean, you had an opportunity to sort of stay on in either US or UK, and with your profile, you could have gotten any job. PNG CEO from India can get anything, anywhere. Why did you choose to come back, and since there is a potential or possibility that a whole bunch of Indians, because of the geopolitical situation, whatever is happening in US and so on and so forth, they say that as many as 40% of Indians are planning to come back because they can't handle it anymore. So now they're coming in. Why did you come back, and what is your message for these people who might come back?
certainly the level of governance was much better
Right.
in the US. By the time I got to be 50, in my 40s, I was, in fact, one day I came, I drove to, I was driving to work in Cincinnati, Ohio, which is the headquarters
Right.
of Procter & Gamble. And I was head of global strategy at that time. So there was a meeting of the team from Pampers. We make a product called Pampers,
Of course.
baby diapers.
Diapers, yeah.
And there's a global meeting where the R&D people were saying what new developments they had made on the product, and the Europeans, Latin Americans, Asian countries, they were presenting their plans. And I'm looking out the window and I'm saying, is this what life is all about? Selling the next case of Pampers? surely there's more to do in life.
Right.
And so that's that thinking. I think most of us, whether you're at the top of the company earning millions, or you're even lower down, everybody I think asks that question: is this what life is all about? And so in my case, I decided, and in my case also it was triggered by something that was going on in India.
Right.
That morning on the coming to work, driving to work, I turned on NPR, the National Public Radio, and there was an interview which talked about the fact that the reforms in India, this is 94,
Right.
reforms are in trouble. And if you ask me, I got so scared by that, because for me, our independence was not in 1947. Our Azadi came in 1991. And so it was the fear. And I had met Manmohan Singh when he was a junior fellow in the finance ministry.
Yeah.
And I was running the company, and I'd met him, and he had been helpful, and we had become friends. I never asked for any favors or anything. I had his private
Phone number.
and I had his email.
Right.
So I shot off an email. I said, I read this news. By now he was the finance minister.
Right.
He was doing those reforms.
Right.
And I said, look, why is nobody selling the reforms?
Right.
Why are we just keeping quiet? I didn't expect him to reply. But he said, why don't you come back and sell the reforms? Help us.
Wow.
And so that gave me some josh.
To the people who are either forced to come back or are sort of, voluntary looking at sort of coming back in this thing, the message would be, that since you had to migrate because our opportunities were limited, so why not create that environment,
Yes, and now, of course, India has changed.
That's correct. Yeah.
India has changed. In my time, switching from being CEO and Procter & Gamble and or managing director Procter & Gamble worldwide,
Right.
I became what my wife said was a starving writer.
Last question, what is your crisp take, on the one big future of India?
Well, I would just, the India of my dream is the India that, and it's a doable one. This is not a Goldilocks future or a Cinderella fairy tale.
Right.
For 30 years, we've been growing at 6.5%. That's damn good.
Right.
Today, we are the fastest growing major economy in the world.
Correct.
All we need to do is take that 6.5 to 7.5. Do the reforms, create an industrial revolution, which is doable. Bring in more Apple type companies, Nikes and others.
Right.
So it's all low-hanging fruit. What I'm trying to say is to go from 6.5 to 7.5 will take our per capita income from about $3,000 today
Right.
to about $12,000.
That's remarkable. Yeah.
Now the Viksit Bharat goal is 14,000.
Right.
Okay, if we can do that, great. But let's be happy. Just take it up by 1 percentage point.
Right.
This is the power of compound
Compounding,
interest.
yeah, that is correct.
1 percentage point will take you. At 6.5, we continue. We'll still cross 10,000,
Right.
which would not be bad.
Yeah. And
So what I'm saying is, I'm talking about a time that by then, the middle class will be not 30%, but 60%.
that is correct.
And for me, the first duty of the state is to enable people to live with comfort. We may have lifted people out of poverty. Poverty level now, the absolute poverty level is only 2.5%.
Yeah.
Which is good, but still people are in the lower, you just cross the poverty line, you're still very vulnerable.
Correct.
So when people have got some comfort. Now, it's not going to be easy because AI is there, it's going to eat up a lot of jobs, but people will still need to wear clothes, children will still need toys, everything will not be on screen,
That's correct.
and so people will still need to wear shoes. And yes, there'll be robots, etc., but I still feel
So there's enough and more sort of room for it. Yeah.
just if you can get some of those people off the farm into factory jobs, do what Vietnam is doing, what Bangladesh did with garments.
Right.
So it's not rocket science.
It isn't. Yeah, you know.
And that's my idea
For
of
one big future of
future
India.
of India.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah.
You know, this was.
But also preserve our democracy.
Yes, it has
Our
to.
democracy is in danger of turning illiberal.
Right.
In the last, years, we how the illiberal.
Absolutely with you. And we couldn't have asked for a better opening episode, for One Big Future. This was remarkable. Thank you very much, Mr. Das, for taking the time and talking to us.